I'd like to introduce our speakers for today's presentation, Nicholas Chalon, CEO and founder of Ask Sage, and Ian Tien, CEO and co-founder of Mattermost. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our presenters for the day. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Anna. It's really great to be here with Nick and Carahsoft. So today we're going to be talking about a few things. We'll have an intro and welcome to everyone here. We're going to be talking about challenges and opportunities for AI in government, breaking down into a few categories. We're talking about security and trust and how we can unlock value and use cases in AI using in secure environments. We'll talk about training and data used to develop these models and enhance them. And we'll talk about how plugins and agents can be used to action some of the insights that are coming out of these AI systems. We'll be talking about how to integrate AI into different workflows, how to have multiple people working with AI system to make their work more productive and more reliable. And we'll talk about portability and futures for AI. So how do you think about systems that can work as sort of the underlying technologies in AI change and evolve? And we'll also have time for some additional audience questions as they're asked. So please do ask questions, and if we can fit them into the different topics as we have them, we can answer them in context. So that's a little bit of the agenda for today. Would love to sort of introduce and welcome Nick, founder of Ask Sage, former Chief Software Officer of the US Air Force and Space Force. And we'd love Nick just to maybe share a little bit about his background and his journey and about why he founded Ask Sage and where things are today. So Nick.
Thanks for having me. Very excited. I think this is a great group to be able to share some insights on how we've been able to help government teams use AI. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion, but I don't want to bore people too much. I created my first company back in France. I was 15. I'm 38 now, so I founded 13 companies over the years. After my 12th company, I wanted to make a difference, so I started at DHS. I was a chief architect, a special advisor for cybersecurity at DHS. Brought zero trust into the department at the time. Was pretty innovative, I guess. And then started as the first chief software officer in DoD and brought DevSecOps and Kubernetes into jets and bombers and space systems and even nuclear systems. Was a lot of fun for 3 years, and left the government about 1.5 years ago. It was a tough, it's a tough time to find something exciting after you leave such a job, because it's kind of so incredible. It's the best people you can work with, most exciting mission, but also the most rewarding outcomes for our kids. And so it was very exciting, and I had a tough time getting excited again to find something else to do. And ChatGPT came, and I started playing with it like everybody else at first, for things like writing my video scripts and stuff like that, and became a pretty face reading the stuff that ChatGPT was telling me to say. And at some point I realized that was fun and all, but started to go beyond that, and beyond the gimmicks, and started to see real, mission value. And that's when we decided, maybe it's time to maybe create a company about this and bring it into the government, because, we know how much we're lagging behind. And I knew that if I didn't do it, or someone like me didn't do it, it would take years for the capabilities to end up in the hands of both the military and also the civilian teams. And so that's what we did, and signed up 4,500 government teams and 950 companies in 3 months. It's been insane, and we love it.
Excellent. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, it's really a pleasure to have you on the Mattermost platform as well. We get a lot of chance to sort of leverage AI in what Mattermost does, and I think Ask Sage is really bring that to government organizations. So my name is Ian Tien, Mattermost co-founder and CEO. Mattermost is an open source platform for secure collaboration in defense, government, and tech enterprises. You can find out more at carahsoft.com/Mattermost. And we're excited to have Nick and Ask Sage here. So Ask Sage is the GPT platform with baked-in security for government teams. You can find out more at asksage.ai. So that's kind of intros and context. And what you'll find in Mattermost and Ask Sage working together is the ability to bring AI into workflows, to do things such as summarization of conversations and incidents. So this screenshot, for example, is, hey, you might have very often in Mattermost and secured environments, you'll have things like, security incidents or, long-running discussions. And AI is one example, if you do it sort of securely in the right way, to be able to create summaries of information that you can share out and really increase the speed and effectiveness of your teams many, many fold. So if you want to try out some of this open source integration, you can go to github.com/mattermost/openops, which is our platform for integrating AI backends such as Axe Sage. So you can check those all out today. And we'll be talking about all the different opportunities that these kind of technologies bring. So to start off, I'd love to learn more from Nick and Ask Sage. First topic is really around trust and security in AI for government. And Nick is really the perfect person to think about, like, well, you got the Department of Defense, one of the most important organizations in the world. And I'd love to just start off some context for everyone that's joining. Nick, can you talk a little about authority to operate and the sort of systems that DoD has in place to make sure that there's sort of security and trust in its infrastructure?
Yeah, that's kind of the pain of probably everybody on this call here is, how do you get software accredited in their agencies, and how do you deal with the velocity of getting this done so you can move at a pace of relevance? And so in DoD, I pushed this new concept of what we call a continuous authority to operate, continuous ATO, where we effectively can release software multiple times a day by leveraging technologies and automation and continuous monitoring, but also the concept of DevSecOps, kind of removing bottlenecks and automating scanning and assessments and documentation as well. And in fact, AI is going to end up playing a pretty big part of the cyber security framework and OMF DoD security process to automate the documentation of some of these artifacts. And so, I think it has to do, of course, with a piece of compliance. That's not always security, but it's important to check those boxes. But then it's also about actual security and bringing advanced concept like zero trust, next generation access control, labeling based control to control who gets to see what and when, and not everybody should have access to everything, and all these good things that we have to deal with to enforce need to know and least privilege. And so I think that's kind of the foundation of a good stack to be able to get things done.
Yep, excellent. So we've got this kind of platform for authority to operate and continuous ATOs, and a lot of innovation happening right now in those processes. When you think about the context of AI, how would you sort of frame the categories of things that are sort of new that people have to deal with that might be different than other sort of standard ATO processes?
Well, AI by definition is going to be a little bit different in the sense that you can really easily assess what it does. There's a lack of transparency sometimes and explainability where you can't really understand how it gets to conclusions. And so of course you want to mitigate what it's going to be able to do and how it's going to be able to do it. If you start using AI to generate code or take actions, you don't want to just give it access to everything and it can just start creating scannet number 2. And destroy systems and maybe create cyber risks. And so I think it's been really the foundation of what we had to build to build kind of the all the cyber controls and capabilities to protect that and make sure that yes, we can augment velocity and control the system, but also verify it. And I think generative AI by definition, when you look at how it's trained and how this works, is a little bit different from traditional AI models and NLPs and other kind of machine learning solutions, because generative AI is really creating content based on the training it received. And so if you don't know the content used for the training, or if you cannot augment that training with your own data, of course, then the value is drastically reduced and the trust in the AI is then at risk. And so that's where that's why a big chunk of what we had to build was the ability to augment the knowledge of these models with organizational knowledge and databases and APIs.
Yep, very cool. I think you mentioned, sort of bias and hallucinations, and those seem to be, really specific to generative AI. So it can do a lot of really powerful things, but sometimes in certain systems, they kind of get the facts wrong. So, what have been approaches to sort of get around, that bump in the road?
Yeah, it's a very big one, so first, we can talk about hallucinations, right? And there's so much that the bot has learned through its training, but then also you can augment that, right, in real time by adding additional insights. And so the way we mitigate hallucinations really is kind of twofold, right? One is we try to detect it by Sage is displaying references and displaying kind of how the bot came to a conclusion. And so if it doesn't, or if it's not really transparent or giving references that exist, and we kind of check that out and see, whether or not, the reference is real, then it's a good sign that's going to be, an hallucination. And so that's number one. Number two, when you can train the bot on additional content, then you can address the gaps. For example, people were asking Sage, information about our API. We have an API for people to use Sage outside of the UI. And at first, we didn't train Sage on the API. We didn't think about it. And people were asking questions, and it was just making stuff up, right? Making endpoints and making fields, and it looked pretty real, but it was completely made up. It wasn't at all the right endpoints and the right names, and some ended up being right by luck, pure luck, but it was just wrong. And so then we trained it. People say, oh, we're getting all this information, it's not right. Well, yeah, it's an hallucination. It's not trained about it. And then we train it, and now people use it to get information about the API every day. So it's also kind of this iterative process of training. But in government, there's two aspects of trust, right? We didn't really tackle security yet, but I think it's important to bring it up a little bit. If you look at ChatGPT, of course, and you've seen it in the news, with Samsung and other companies putting their IP and information into ChatGPT, and then the model use that data to train the model, and then effectively everybody has access to what you're typing, which is not good, to say the least. And so what we had to build in our case, right, is a dedicated endpoint on a FedRAMP High region to have Azure OpenAI, not OpenAI commercial, which has, by the way, a lot of foreign nationals in there. So we don't want to use that, right? If you want to control who gets to see what and when, the Azure OpenAI stack has settings they created specific for our Sage and the government work we're doing to not use the data entered to train the model. So there's no training of the model with the data that we have, all the customers enter. Two, I think very important too, there is no human in the loop, no content filtering. If you look at ChatGPT and OpenAI on the commercial side, what they do is obviously look for people, talking about guns and whatnot, and then they flag it, and then there's human review and all that kind of stuff. We don't do that. There's no human review. There's no human that has access to the stack and to your prompts and answers. And then, of course, I think as important is the ability to not have any logs and telemetry on the Azure OpenAI side. So there's effectively it's what we call a fire and forget API, where you ask a question and you forgot you even asked the question. The way we remember you asked the question is because we keep the history and the logs on the Gov fabric, and that's where Sage is hosted. That's where the data at rest is hosted. That's where the training data gets stored, but it's decoupled from the model. So we never fine tune the data into the model. I think that's very important. People that don't understand that, that's probably the most essential piece of today is, if you fine tune data into a model, then everybody that has access to the model would have access to the data that you fine tune into the model. Obviously, that's okay for public data and policy and stuff that's widely accessible. But when it comes to government data that needs to be controlled, obviously need to know is a must. And so what we ended up having to build is a capability that's agnostic to the model, so you can swap model and ask different questions and be able to swap between GPT 3.5, 4, Google Bot and Cohere and whatever open source model you want to use, and be able to have the same knowledge base on top. So all the training you do, all the PDF, Excel, PowerPoint, APIs, data lakes, integrations you want to do on top of Sage gets decoupled from the model so that you have the same level of insight across all models. And I think that's the key. And we do it on a per user basis using labels that are data sets that can then be assigned to the users if you want to share the knowledge across different team members and so on. But by default, you are the only one that gets to see your training. And so it's almost like getting a dedicated bot just for you, but then you can also share it with others on a per label basis and per data set basis.
Excellent, thank you. So just for attendees that have hands raised, if folks can just enter the question in text, then we can add it to the conversation in the right category. So please,
in the Q&A box below. Yeah, the little Q&A box.
Yeah, please add the Q&A box, and hopefully it'll pop up. Okay, excellent. So security and trust, and I'm sure we'll touch on this in other topics. The other big one that is kind of headlining, this presentation is really about use cases and what are the activities that are sort of most ready for disruption from AI. When you think about, hey, I'm planning out, this is the processes I want, these are the people I want to hire, this is the budget I'm looking for. Are there folks that in those functions that are going to be at risk of being sort of displaced? Like in the private sector, it's happening, right? Content generation, art generation, those professions are being really changed materially by Midjourney and other products out there. Where do you see in government the biggest opportunities for increased efficiency and potentially even smaller teams?
Yeah, and it's true that in the government, jobs are probably not going to be displaced, but at the same time you want to compete against China, and Beidou gave access to their GPT equivalent to the CCP across all domains, and so we're competing against those guys every day. And so if we want to be able to move at the pace of relevance, we have no choice but to use this kind of technology. The numbers we see in terms of return on investment and velocity increase are insane. The news talks about 30%. That's totally wrong. On the development side, for example, we see 10x to 20x on average. On the acquisition side, we see 16 to 26 times on average. On the intelligence side, we see 15 to 25x on average. So really massive volume of increase of velocity. So one person turning into 20 people. That's insane. When I look back, I've yet to find a technology that's drastically changed my life in a short amount of time as much as this has changed my life in terms of my day-to-day way of doing work. Both if you look at Sage itself, 90% of the UI, 90% of the backend, 100% of the DevSecOps stuff, 100% of the CI/CD pipeline, 100% of our cyber RMF package and ATO package and the GDPR for Europe and so on package that's been created by the bot. The logo was created by the bot. I mean, it's a company as a service tool to pretty much get anything done as long as you know how to orchestrate it. And probably the biggest skill you can get nowadays is prompt engineering skills. And we're working with the Cloud Security Alliance, the CSA, to create a new curriculum and a new certificate to kind of help people get where they need to be able to use these technologies. But when you look at use cases in government, it's kind of mind-boggling. Seeing 4,500 government teams signing up in 3 months for a product on the government side is probably unheard of. I don't think that even happened before. And that tells you that we're touching every kind of aspect of jobs. On the acquisition side, we see people using it to write RFPs. We have access to GPT-4 32K, which is 80 pages of prompt context. So you can really, do a lot of great value there. So writing RFPs, RFIs on the government side, we see companies using it to respond to RFPs. For us as Sage, we train Sage, of course, on Sage itself. And so now we can respond to bids. And, on average, went from 5 days to 32 minutes to respond to a bid. That's a game changer right there. Then, of course, we see government teams then using Sage to grade the bid responses to decide, who is going to win the bids. Then, if you move on the software development side, you see, of course, people using it to help write code, and pretty complex stuff, convert from one language to another, adding comments. We have plugins that scan your Git repo and look for cyber improvements and performance improvements, and which, no cyber tools can do. Performance improvement is not a thing, but it creates a merge request into your Git repo, and then, human can go review and see if they like the changes. It's been a game changer for us to comment all our source code. I hate commenting code. I don't know about you, but I hate it. And so every night, Sage does it for me, and I've never had to change it. And then, on the cyber side, it's a game changer also because we see teams using it to act as a SOAR or as a piece of their SOC, and kind of looking at logs and telemetry and alerting, but also writing compliance documentation. I got a quote as a company to do my FedRAMP High, and particularly writing my NIST 853 1200 controls for high. And it was $300,000 and 4 to 6 months of work, according to the company. And we've done it in 7 hours for $250 of Sage tokens. And so what we did is we trained Sage on its architecture and what tools we use on Azure and whatnot, and Amazon and Google. And so we kind of did this whole thing, and it took us a good day, right, to before that, to train on the architecture schemas and all the key pieces of Sage. And then we just told it to write the implementation for each of the controls, and it did a great job. It was 96% accurate. The 4% is just me being too perfectionist. It was good enough, but I wanted to make it perfect. So just to tell you, when it comes to government teams doing ATO packages and writing all these documentation, it's just a game changer. Wrote all my GDPR documentation for the European side of things. Game changer for any kind of documentation, implementation details. It was very good, very good. But you have to know how to ask the question, right? When people come to me and say, hey, I couldn't do X, Y, and Z, I always tell them, well, maybe it's because you don't know how to ask it, and so that's the cyber side, right? Both kind of defense. There's going to be an offense component, but we're not going to talk about that here. And then, we see intelligence, so ability to translate, summarize. We have different personas in Sage to be able to adjust the output. So for officers and enlisted, we have a persona to help them write their officer performance report and enlisted performance report, so they can follow the same template and not have to do this by hand. Summarizing emails or conversations, translation, sentiment analysis. The way Sage started is because I have access to this company I used to be on the board of, which is has a CCP member resume database of resumes of CCP members, and it's 150 fields. It's a lot of information, work history and education and so on. You put that on Google, it's a JSON file. It's just a bunch of fields. The brain is not able to picture the person. It's too much. It's too many fields. It's just, you can't really picture the person. And so, I copy and paste, and the JSON is in Chinese, right? And so I copy and paste a JSON into Sage and say, translate and summarize who this person is. And I got a 2-3 paragraph description of who the person is and what they like to do, and, the work, and how much they want in terms of salary and whatnot. Now you can see the person right in front of you. It's mind-boggling, right? And so the bot was able to take this plain JSON and make it a story, right? A factual story. And so, I think when you start looking at all these use cases, that's how you set the stage, and that's how you get started, but that's the beginning and the kind of the tip of the iceberg, if you will. The more time you spend on this technology, and I spend my my days on it, so it's fun. I keep pushing the boundary and the understanding of what we can do with it. We started tapping into APIs and data lakes, right? And so we started with a AMC in the Air Force to do a go no go flying decision plugin, which effectively taps into 20 FAA Air Force databases and APIs, and helps pilots make decision whether or not to go fly. Well, it's tapping into all these data sources and bringing back all the answers and it's not a black box. You get to see that as a pilot, and then you get to make decisions empowered by that. And the bot is giving you also a second opinion. But what's a game changer was to be able to tap into these APIs, right? Because when you train the bot on content, let's say a PDF, a policy or whatnot, that's kind of stuck in time. If you're going to go get the weather, you don't want to get the weather of yesterday, right? You want to get the weather of right now. And so, when you start tapping into APIs and building agents and plugins and decision trees where, if this, do this, then do that, and do else, do this, right? All these kind of complex decisions that, you do as a human when you make, you build tasks, complex ones, and you can start, automating a piece of it or maybe all of it with human review, and insight and support or not. For example, data labeling is a nightmare in DoD. And so we created a plugin to label data. And so every time you have a new entry in your data lake, whether it's Elastic, we did an integration with Elastic, MongoDB, SQL servers, whatever, right? It notifies the API, and then it decides what labels make sense to be added, and then seamlessly do all that without any human intervention, right? So the potentials when you start tapping into all these agents, plugins, integrations, and data lakes, that's where you make it more factual, but that's also where you start ingesting your data. Companies have worked with us to start ingesting, for example, their past performance and their existing bids, so that they can write better bid responses with our Sage and completely seamlessly. And now it knows where to tap and what example to use when, if they're relevant to the bid or not. It's a game changer.
Excellent. And yeah, thank you. I think there's a lot of folks in government that are very excited to jump in here. Maybe just to go back to security and trust, we're getting some questions coming in. Can you talk a little about the different levels of restricted information? So, controlled, unclassified, and the different layers, and what sort of green light, what's sort of like green light, maybe yellow light right now for the Ask Sage platform?
Yeah, and I saw a question, and I should have mentioned it. The architecture that Microsoft designed for OpenAI on IL5 is actually my architecture. It was based on Sage, and so we gave it back. We gave it back to industry so that everybody can use the way we deploy, and that's completely compliant with IL5, and that's how we are able to do CUI today with 40 agencies across .gov, .mil, and the IC. So. I guess I'm biased, so because I designed it, it does meet all the requirements. There's really no concern for me if I was in the government and still the CSO, I would have no problem at, approving it. The other piece of that is the fact that, it costs $150 million to host OpenAI, and let's face it, we're going to have to rethink the way we do business. It's hosted on the FedRAMP High region with all the features we had to put in place to have no human review, no data ingest, no data at rest, find forget API, all these things, and the rest being on the Azure Gov really alleviates all the issues, and we really have no choice. If we want to compete, particularly when it comes to AI product, there's just not enough GPUs right now, and so I think that's something to pay attention to, and we just gonna have to rethink the way we do business. The fact is, John Sherman and the DoD CIO, for example, are really embracing this idea of flattening the unclassified fabric and start using commercial cloud at our FedRAMP High, and not have to have these dedicated government regions that are stuck 3 to 4 years sometimes behind the commercial fabric, and it's just not good. It's interesting because when we move Sage from the commercial fabric to the Gov fabric, we lost cyber capabilities because they don't exist on the Gov fabric. So we moved to be more secure so that we are less secure because we had less cyber capabilities on the Gov fabric. So it's just something to pay attention to.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. So just to double click on that, we have some specific questions from the audience on, for example, Microsoft architecture. Of the Microsoft architecture for OpenAI on IL5. So,
yeah, so that's the answer I kind of just gave is kind of this cohesive set of controls meeting the L5 requirements, despite the API not running on the L5 fabric, but on the L4 fabric. But we mitigated that by adding controls and not going through the internet, by going through the Azure, global network. And so, I don't see a risk. I think both John Chairman and David McKeon, the DoD CISO, are also very much in agreement that that's the only way to do business, and we need to have the capability. So, that's just the way we built it, and that's the way I think people need to use it.
Excellent. Thank you. Another Q&A on AI as a general purpose. So another question around AI, if it's more valuable as a general purpose tool like ChatGPT, or in more sort of specific use cases like CDAO using Aquabot or userogue.com when doing proposals. Any opinions or?
Yeah, so I don't know userogue.com, but I know Aquabot, and they're doing a great job, and it's great. Now, in effect, I think the answer was already provided by the results of the launch of ChatGPT. I think it was made clear to everybody that people don't want to have to think about using different tools when they want to get stuff done. They actually love the idea of this general purpose tool that can be augmented with plugins to do better things. And that's the way we design our Sage. We have acquisition plugins, and we have effectively kind of the same capabilities than an Aquabot would do, but we are a global general purpose tool that can be augmented by custom plugins, both our plugins that we build for the enterprise and for our customers, but also customers can write their own plugins, and sky's the limit when it comes to building agents and automation. And so, I think the answer is already a done deal, because we've seen the adoption of ChatGPT. Okay, the reason why I think it's been so successful is because people want a general purpose tool that does anything, and they don't want to have to think about, because AI has been here forever. And the fact is, there's a lot of different models, and if you know how to run it, you can run a bunch of different things. They're very precise and do very specific things. People don't want to do that. They don't want to have to think about that. They want to do something, ask a question, get an answer. They don't care how it's done. They don't care how the back end is working or not. And I think that's why ChatGPT was such a success. If it was just a lawyer tool, I can tell you no one would have cared, and no one would even be talking about it today, right? And the fact that because it's capable of doing so much is why. That's why when people compare models and they look at GPT-3, 5, 4, Cohere, FLAN-T5, Falcon, whatever, all these models, right? Google Bard, right? You compare, and they have benchmarks, right, to kind of compare performances. These are very biased, right? Because they don't compare the knowledge and the content ingested by the bot. And that is so important, right? Because when you ask a question, most users at least want to be able to ask any question, get an answer, and pull from Google if they don't know, right? And all that automation behind the scene. And they want it to be factual. They want it to be up to date. And so the fact is, the data ingest process of the model and how much data you ingested is very important. And so I think that's why we have, our Sage is agnostic to the model, and we support about 10, 12 models now. I don't know. But if you look at the demand, the fact is ChatGPT, GPT-3, 5, and 4, and 432K are by far the most used on our Sage, because it's the most comprehensive and maybe also detailed, and also they have less hallucinations. You look at some of the other, like Claude and Google Bard. Even when I tell it who I am and I give it my bio, it still hallucinate and make stuff up that I was going to some school and got some degree that I never got. And when it's not in my bio, right? ChatGPT doesn't, GPT-4 and 3.5 don't do that, right? They were trained not to do that, but also they also ingested way more data than any of these models. And so we can dismiss it as if it's not important, but it is. And so I think overall, general purpose tools is the answer, assuming you can augment the results with plugins, which is why we were the first one actually to have plugins before ChatGPT to augment Sage capabilities and be able to tailor it to different use cases like acquisition, for example.
Yep, excellent. Thank you. So feel free for the participants to ask more questions around this. Next topic is around, we've been talking about a little bit, training data, powering AI for government. And maybe we can just take a little step back, because I think there's different sort of skill levels around AI models. Could you share just a little bit high level about sort of training and fine tuning versus embeddings and sort of vector databases and passing context in as those two different ideas?
Yeah, you pretty much never have to fine tune models. The only time you would have to fine tune model is really if you want to bring maybe a new language, like the LLM wasn't trained on French and you want to teach it French or whatever, that would be a use case, or a new kind of format like JSON or whatever that you didn't train it on. Ideally, the models you would use as a base model would already know that stuff, so you don't have to do that anyways. That's why GPT is so superior to most models. But open source models are going to catch up, and it's coming. And I think within a year, and that's why we made it very clear that Sage is agnostic, and we want to support any model, and we don't want you to get locked into Microsoft or anybody else, and you want to have options. And I think for the government, it's essential. Right. So back to the way I do business is, making sure that we have options and bring diversity of options. And so that's what we built. And so effectively, you're not going to have to fine tune. Most likely not. At least not at the beginning. And you may need to fine tune when really you go beyond some of the understanding we have of some of these models, which most people are very far from that. It might be 2 or 3 years away, and who knows, by then maybe models will be then fine-tuned by somebody else, and you don't even have to do that because someone else is going to do it for you. But I don't see really a need to fine-tuning these models when it comes to generative AI, right? I'm not talking about AI in general, I'm talking about generative AI. And so forget about fine-tuning, because if you fine-tune any data, then it gets accessible to everybody that has access to the model. So it's not financially doable to start fine-tuning on per team basis and do that at scale. It would cost a fortune of GPU, so it really makes no sense. So then what we do is embeddings, and it's added on top of the model using a vector database. And so we have a great partnership with Weaviate, and Weaviate, in fact, will be on my show next Tuesday, the CEO, to talk about what they're working on. It's amazing. And we were the first one to bring Weaviate air-gapped and in DoD and all that kind of stuff. And now with vectors, what you can do, right, is the ability, just like Google does, to search, and find relationships and things that you wouldn't find without vectors, because it's not just doing word search. It's doing way more complex things using similarity and stuff like that. And so when you fine tune, the data goes into the model and it's stuck in there, and you also have a black box. You can't show references. It doesn't really know how you learn this stuff. With embeddings, we have the ability on the screen to show you the references and the links to them, and so where the data came from. So you have that transparency and knowledge of provenance and integrity of the data. And so very important for DoD, and we've done it in the way I built, in fact, the Air Force data fabric when I was the chief software officer, which is next generation access control, NGAC, which is a fancy way to say we use labels and not just roles to label data and then assign labels to users. And so when you're a user and the data owner, you can ingest data, whether it's text, whether it's PDF, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, you name it. And you're going to ingest it into a data set that you're going to give it a name, a label. You call it whatever you want. And then that label can then be assigned to the people so that other people have access to the data. So now you're in control of that data. You know who has access to it and how and when. And we built plugins in Sage to ingest all these files and all these things. And then with the API, sky is the limit. You can pretty much do anything. So when you train, then it's going to be passed to the bot. When you're talking about specific topics, it's going to go and look for the closest 5-10 results, and you're going to bring this back to your query and augment the knowledge of the LLM, regardless of the LLM you're using. So if I ask who is Nick Chalon, my bio is ingested by the bot, and there's some labels we made accessible to everybody, right? So like DoD policy, the default, DoD bios, whatever, bunch of stuff that's just, the NDAA 2023, whatever, right? Can be accessible to everybody. And, the way this works is the bot then will pass that information on top of any model. So if I ask who is Nick Chalon to ChatGPT 3.5 and then go to GPT-4 and then go to Google Bison, which is Google Bard, I don't have to retrain it. It's going to know. And that's a way to do it, right? Because you want to have access control. You want to have need to know enforcement. You want to have the ability to segment data on a per label basis. And you want to be agnostic to the model, so you can pick whoever is going to win in 2 or 3 years, and who knows who that's going to be, right? And for the government standpoint, to start fine-tuning and training a model and getting locked into one model is completely foolish, right? Because you don't know who is going to win.
Excellent. That makes a lot of sense. Well, maybe just to double click on one of those areas. You talked about personalization earlier, and the concept of labels that can be added to that context for the back ends. Do you ever think that vector databases and embeddings would start to get personal? So it's a collection of all the documents and conversations a human being kind of thinks about, and having personalization kind of go beyond. Does that feel like something that's longer term, not a thing, nearer term?
Well, we have people doing it right now on Sage, because of our APIs. They're able to create data sets on their emails and per user basis. And they do that today and summarize their day, summarize their conversations via emails. I think it's going to be baked into Teams and into Office 365 very soon. So I don't see that being the play for Sage long term, because I think all these basic collaboration stuff is going to be baked into Google and Office, and people are not going to need Sage for that. So we try to focus more on the enterprise stuff, right? Where we can do complex decision trees and do complex decisions, tapping into databases, APIs, and stuff. But the fact is, definitely something you can do today.
Yep, excellent. Thank you. So next topic is really around AIs and plugins. We talked about them a little bit. So we've got, a lot of the AI is kind of an input to a human being, get a response back. But I think you also mentioned, well, it can be output as well. You can actually start having AI automate certain actions. Where do you think that, how does that evolve? Like, what do you think would be kind of the first use cases for that to get after the trust and safety issues are kind of off the checklist? And how do you see that unfolding, that actual output and actioning on behalf of users?
And by the way, that's the future right there. And nobody knows how far this is going to go. I can tell you some of the agents we're building, automating an entire day of work of people, and look, people, is going to disrupt jobs, whether we like it or not, it's just going to do that. Now, it's going to create new jobs. Is it going to be the same people? I don't know. But the fact is, if you want to at least embrace it, there's a better chance of having a place in the new jobs that are going to be created by all these AI stuff. And, we're not going to put the genie back in the bottle. It's not going to happen. And China is not waiting for us to figure it out. And so, you look at agents and plugins, it's kind of mind-boggling. I have amazing example. We started with a nonprofit, in the VA. We really care about the veterans, and so we wanted to help. And so we reach out to them and say, hey, you have this medical data you have to collect, and it's about 500 to 1,000 pages of medical records. They have to find medications, illnesses, and dates, and when it was prescribed and why, and all that kind of stuff. And it takes 2 weeks on average for the nonprofit to do it, and it's a nightmare, and it's painful. And we tried to say, okay, can we ingest 2,000 pages using GPT, and extract, not just summarize, but extract medications, illnesses, dates, all that kind of medical insight that they need to have to write the medical claim. And now we do it in 7 minutes, right? So you went from 2 weeks to 7 minutes. Mind-boggling. And it does not hallucinate because, when you ask it to extract, it's not going to make stuff up. And, he knows the medication. So he knows, like, hey, if you're taking this drug, that's for cancer or whatever. So he's going to know if you're looking. So like Congress is using the same feature, for example, to extract insight because they don't read the bills, obviously. That's what they don't do it, So maybe they don't have the time, I don't know, but they don't read the bills. So what they end up doing is saying, okay, find any mention of climate change, right, into this bill. But it's not just climate change. Even if it's related to climate, it's going to find it, right? So it's very good at synonyms and the meaning of the words, and so it's going to find everything related to it, right? And then extract that from the bill. And so that kind of use case is mind-boggling. But then with agents now, you can do decision trees. If this, and you do this, then you do that, else you do this, right? And so you can automate use cases. For example, labeling of data. You're going to extract, the data. You're going to label it. Based on the label, you could say, well, if it's this label, maybe you summarize it, or maybe you do iterative summarization, which is, you summarize it multiple times to make it smaller and smaller. So like take the NDAA, and if you actually summarize multiple times and you train that to the bot, it's actually better at answering some questions because it has the ability to go very precise and get you the full, piece of the law, or it's able to summarize, the entirety of the thing. And so really good to use plugins to do stuff like that, for example. But when you start doing the task, like we said, the go no go flying decision, okay, you type the weather, then you get icing, then you get this, right? The pilots minimums, you get the plane specs, you get the route, what are the alternative routes, but you could trigger this on the based on the information. Another example is our plugin to tap into databases, right? You can ask a question, say, show me how many users I have that are from the Air Force and sign up in April 2023. That's going to take this plain text question, convert it into a SQL query, run the query. If the query doesn't work, we tell it to self-reflect, fix its own mistake, and we get the results and have the bot now do an analysis of the results to display in a neat, nice, organized way instead of a JSON format or whatever, and Markdown or whatever. So that's just like a step-by-step thing that humans would take. First you have to have a coder do the glue code, right? And do a dashboard or some glue code thing. And now it's like you have unlimited untapped potential to tap into these databases. But oh, by the way, when false, need to know on the query too, so that if that user is only supposed to have access to this table, he should not be able to see the other stuff or the other fields of the PII, right? So we can enforce that need to know even with these plugins. So it's just a game changer to really bring all these insights, knowledge, data into this universe of getting things done.
That's amazing. Thank you. Those are absolutely excellent examples. So we're cutting about to like 9 minutes. So for any participants, and a few folks have asked questions, if you have any more, please add them and we'll make sure to get them at the end. If there's any, or follow up depending on time. Sort of last topic here that's prepared is really on the acceleration of workflows inside of government. So multi-user workflows in particular. So Mattermost is that secure collaboration, platform for defense. A lot of folks on it, and in our OpenOps platform, which has 8 different AI backends, people are doing summarization of whether it's incidents or different discussions. We've got sort of sentiment analysis. We've got the ability to do meeting summarization, and we're seeing a lot of sort of general purpose capabilities. Just kind of curious, when you think about multi-user environments and workflows that are sort of the most sort of obvious, how do we go from a sort of single player mode where people are working with ChatGPT sort of one-on-one to sort of a multiplayer? Where do you see opportunities there in the government space?
Well, I think that's why the first plugin we built was the integration with Mattermost. I think the demand was off the charts. People wanted the ability to not only tap into the bot, but have this group chat engagements where not just one person can see what's happening and can follow up, and engage with the bot. sky's the limit with these. That's why we didn't want to get into this in terms of our UI, because our UI is designed for one person thing. I mean, you can train data sets and you can share data sets with others, but they do it on their own UI and their own screen, not supposed to be used by multiple teams at the same time. I think that's where Mattermost comes in, right? And when you start tapping into the API and tapping into the ability of Mattermost and Sage to integrate into pretty much anything, Jira tickets and creating alerts from your SOC and being notified that maybe there's malicious activity in some account or whatnot, and then be able to take action and analyze the information and have the bot do research and be like, okay, where is this guy? Where is this IP from? And then the bot is able to tap into the who is information of the IP and get you the information right back, and all these things that take glue code and what I find mind-boggling is the bot ability to code and code that works. We have a plugin that generates PowerPoint, and the way we done it is we didn't write the code. We asked the bot to write the PowerPoint for us using Python PPTX. And then we have a Python sandbox to run it safely and extract the PowerPoint and scan it and give it back to the user. That's mind-boggling. Like the code is able to work from the bot without any human, right? And so the more this is going to get, it's going to evolve. We can ask the bot to do the tasks without coding it, right? And so that's going to open and remove all these glue code connectors and all these integration things that people used to have to do. And all these full stack engineers having to write that code. These people are going to have to reinvent a way to do business, because that's not going to be done by people anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing some customers where the usage is pretty much 50% coding and technical questions. And then we actually see so it's interesting. The most popular question is like, "Are you sentient?" And
it's not.
Yeah, we're just waiting for someday it replies yes.
I don't even know. Well, you might say yes, but it might be wrong. I don't even know if the humans are sentient sometimes, so you never know. So I think we have no fear there yet, but it's going to come, and but people need to understand it doesn't have to be sentient to take your job away, and I think that's important for people to realize that the impact on jobs. We made too much fun of the blue collar jobs and plumbers and so on, and for some stupid reason we told people they shouldn't do these jobs, and now we can't even find a plumber anymore. But I can tell you those jobs are very safe, and it's not going to be the same for coders and lawyers and marketing and press release, PR people and all these jobs. I see it with Sage. I was going to hire marketing. I'm not going to do that. Sage does it for me every day. Does my LinkedIn posts, my tweets, it's automated. I don't need people. It's better than what I've seen people do. So what's the point?
Yeah, very much with you. I forgot there's actually one more section which is spot on to this conversation, which is about futures and also portability. So as we've all seen, the AI market is changing remarkably fast. By the week or sometimes by the day, whoever's in the leader can be replaced so quickly. So in a world where things are changing so fast, loved you just to maybe close out this discussion with thoughts on portability that you kind of talked about, the flexibility of choosing different platforms, and what are your thoughts on things that decision makers and government should keep in mind in the road ahead?
I think it's very important for the government not to get locked into stacks, and that's why our architecture is very open, and you can leave with your data, and if we don't bring value to you, you shouldn't be using our Sage, and you shouldn't be locked in to our Sage. And a lot of companies have a different way of thinking and doing business, and that's not the way we do it, and we just want to bring value. And I think there's this new wave of product called the GPT or generative AI platforms. It's going to be a new layer because people are not going to have the time to keep up and catch up and do all the stuff we have to do to bring all these capabilities securely to organizations and support all these models, these new models every week. We have 12 now. There's plenty others that we tested and don't make sense to use them. They're not good enough or whatnot, but customers can ask us to add a new model, and we do that very quickly. We have the ability to instantiate, dedicated enclave of our Sage for teams, on the high side or on a per company basis or whatnot, per agency basis. We've done it all. So, I think having that flexibility and the ability to port it on your premises, tapped with your GPUs, SH can run completely AI gapped and disconnected and all that stuff. So, it's the way we want to bring value. And I think, the abstraction and the decoupling and the flexibility and the ability to pick what works is where you want to be. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, just like you're not building your own cloud and not building your own infrastructure and platform stuff. It's going to be the same thing. It's the beginning, so people don't realize how complex it is already. But if you look at our code base, you're going to see how painful it is already to manage all this stuff. But it's just the beginnings. It's going to get worse.
Thank you, Nick. Excellent thought to finish on. We did have one question that ties into the final slide. What is the process for requesting a demo on Ask Sage if my agency is interested in getting additional information on this tool? So
yeah. So first, people can go on sage.ai, create an account for free, and get started. And that's kind of the beauty of Sage. You get started very rapidly, and there's no barrier to entry. And then it's $30 a month, for the accounts, right? To get the full page features and everything. That's also an easy lift to play with stuff and see what you like and don't like. We also give you access to the page features if you reach out to us. So send us an email at sales@sage.ai, and we can set up a demo as well for your team. But I always tell people, like, go play with it. We have a video on the main site that really does a deep dive on the features of Ask Sage, and that way, showing that to your leadership and your colleagues lets us focus on okay, how do we use it for us, so we can bypass kind of all that basics, of introduction of all the basics and focus on the real meat, which is, how you're going to use it, how you're going to get value from it. But again, using it yourself and playing with the stuff is just the way to go. No demo is going to replace that. So we felt like, having the ability to go create an account and get started is just what people want to do, so. No need to pay $1 million to say hi. And that's also the big difference with a solution like us. You're going to find people that are going to go and say, hey, you spent 250 grand and, $500,000, $1 million, well, I don't know, and you get access to stuff. That's a massive barrier to entry contract and stuff. People use a GPC card and get started for $30 with us. It's no barrier to entry. It's month to month. You can stop if you don't like it. It's different. I think it's just, we want to make it simple for people. So. And look at the logo. The logo was created by the bot. I mean, come on. It's mind-boggling. I just couldn't even believe it. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Anna. Thank you, Caresoft. I thought I learned a ton in this, and I hope you all did. So you can go out to AskSage.ai to try it out. If you want to learn more about Mattermost, caresoft.com/Mattermost. Thank you all. And we'll put this recording out on YouTube and LinkedIn and also follow up on email. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you. Stay safe, everybody.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.